Hello, John Talley here with Partzilla.com, and welcome back to the studio. Although we did decide, obviously, to go ahead and continue doing our live series at 3 o'clock on Friday. As long as y'all keep showing up, I would imagine we're going to keep doing this. I'm just going to field a few questions that you send me either through our YouTube channel or our Facebook page, and if I can't answer it on the fly, we will find out the answer and get it back to you. And honestly, guys, it feels good to be back in here. As you can tell, been doing a little work on a YXZ-1000R, so you're definitely going to tune into that one to see everything I'm doing. Doing the regular basics, bearings, pads, whatnot. But the important thing that we're going to do to this one, because it is over on the East Coast, we're going to do a transmission gear reduction kit on it. Also going to install a GYTR clutch, as well as switch it over to a Recluse. Because let's face it, on the East Coast, trails are kind of tight, and we need to gear it down to, to make it drivable. So it's going to be a fun build series, and we're right in the middle of it right now. We actually stopped about 20 minutes ago so we could do this. Well, it looks like I've got a few questions already lining up, so let's dive straight into it. First one, Dorito Man, why haven't my parts shipped out yet? Well, on the other side of that wall, there's roughly 92 employees that are working as hard as they can to get everybody's orders into a box and then shipped out. But that is also compounded by the fact that, the manufacturing supply chain may be backed up. We're dealing with UPS delays, we're dealing with all the different shipping delays, but I promise you, we are trying just as hard as we can to get everything out of here as quickly as possible. Matter of fact, we're even working on Labor Day weekend on that Monday. So if you would, reach out and put your order number, post your order number, and I'll bet you one of our CSRs will pick up that number and find out the answer where your order is and get back in touch with you. All right, Jose, I'm not good with Spanish, so we're gonna have to translate that one and get back to you. All right, Corey is asking me, hi John, great videos, thank you. I have an 06 GSX-R 600. I'm gonna replace the brakes. Can I use a toothbrush with some brake cleaner fluid around the piston rings? I assume you mean the caliper pistons. Before you compress them back in. Yes, that would be fine, but you want to make sure that they're completely dry before you put them back together, because brake cleaner usually doesn't play very nice with the rubber seal, the outer rubber seal, as well as your compression seal that's inside. It'll make it expand more than it should and probably make it too difficult to get that piston to go back in. When you actually reinstall it, you want to coat it down with just your DOT4 fluid, and that should be enough lubrication to get it back in the bore. Greg, you're very welcome. Supermoto, see my original answer to Dorito Man. Put up your order number and we'll find out, and we'll get in touch with you just as quick as we can. All right, Richard's asking me, hi John, I have a 1975 CB 750F. Wow, one of the original 4s. Cool machines, going back to my time period. I need to rebuild the old brake master cylinder, or they are no longer available. I bought an NOS rebuild kit. Any pointers? Be very gentle with it. That would be the biggest thing. And as you are going to rebuild the bore, treat it with kit gloves. In other words, don't use anything really harsh or aggressive as far as cleaning out the bores, because I've seen people use clutch or brake cylinder relining reams, and sometimes they can be a little aggressive. So if you're having to clean off any surface corrosion, just make sure that you do it evenly and not with a lot of pressure, and just take your time. Okay, Andrew's asking me about an 06 Rebel 250. It seems only to have power, half choke, and not full even after warmed up. Anything I can do? Well, it sounds to me like your carburetor needs to be going through, or carburetors. I think that one has 2 if memory serves. It's been a little while. But more than likely, one or both of your pilot jets are stopped up, so the carbs need to come apart, and then you need to go through and clean them up, paying special attention to the smaller jets. Now, if you're unable to get those individual jets cleaned out, instead of going with an entire rebuild kit, just order those individual jets, and that should get you back on the highway. Okay, Wayne is asking me, I have a 2002 Polaris Sportsman. He put a new drive belt. Is there a run time or a break-in time on it? That's actually a really good question, because I believe that there is. A lot of people just throw a new belt in there and they just hammer it. I think you ought to run it maybe 60 to 70% for about an hour, changing your speed a lot. That way it's going through the entire travel on the sheaves, and it's working every surface of that belt. And kind of think of it as burnishing, or bedding in brake pads. You're actually transferring some of the brake pad to the surface of the rotors. Well, to get a good bite or grip into it. Well, in essence, you're kind of doing the same thing with the belt. So you want to go ahead and have it bed in, so to speak. Run it for, I don't know, maybe an hour or so, 60 or 70%, and then let it cool down. After that, she should be good to go. All right, Greg's asking me, what's the best way to fix a small pinhole in my 1978 GT80 gas tank? Overall, a clean tank. Just a small pinhole. I can't remember the name of the company, but they make a cleaning and sealing kit that you may want to look into. The first part of it is almost like an acid bath, where they get rid of all the dirt and corrosion and rust that may be in the tank. And then the second part of the kit is it's like a sealer that you put in and slosh around the entire tank, and then you let it dry overnight. I can't remember the name off the top of it, but let me look that up, and then we'll get back in touch with you. All right, Johnny is asking me about a 2002 Rancher. Clicking starter, replace solenoid, no change. Is it the starter? Chances are probably, but here's what you want to do first, Johnny. Go ahead and get out your volt-ohm meter and put it on voltage. I think I know who you are, so you should know how to do that. And I bet you've got a Fluke 77 hanging around somewhere. And you want to make sure that your battery is north of 12.5 volts. At that point, you need to check the other side of your solenoid, because just because you hear it click does not mean it's making contact inside of that solenoid. Hit the starter or hit the start button, have your positive lead off your volt-ohm meter, see if it lights up the other side of that post. If it does, it's probably going to be your starter. Dylan is asking me, oh no, he's actually just making a comment. Hello from British Columbia, Canada. Can't wait to see more on the YXZ videos. Yeah, me too, because I've been waiting a long time for this one. It sat over in my corral for about 8 months, and we were ready to get going, and the coronavirus hit, and that stopped everything. So I had planned to already be on the trail with this thing, but no, I was denied. So it has my full and undivided attention, and we will crank out those videos as fast as my editor can do it and get them posted up. This is going to be a fun one. All right, Joe is asking me, how do you repair an out of alignment 2004 Honda Rancher? Left wheel is out of alignment. Well, how did it go out of alignment? That's what I'm concerned about here, because when these things come from the factory, they're pretty well set. And if it's way out of whack, that tells me that something has been bent, probably either the steering arm or a lower control arm if it's way out of whack. So just bringing it back into position is not really going to solve your problem if in fact it is bent in, out, or backwards. So I would get out a tape measure and make sure that you're not dealing with a bent A-arm and or a bent frame. But to answer your question, go ahead and put your handlebars straight. Make sure your right tire is straight, and then you want to measure in between the front tire to tire and the back of the tires, tire to tire. And you want that to basically be a 0. You want those two distances to be the same. That way she's tracking true, just straight. Doesn't have to be hyper accurate, but within 1/8 of an inch, maybe a quarter, you'll be fine. I mean, it's not like you're dealing with a 150-mile-an-hour car on a racetrack. All right, somebody's X is asking me about an 03 Honda VTX 1800 cooling temperature red light is on the Speedo. What would be the process to troubleshoot the cooling system? Well, I'd have a couple more questions for you. Is it just doing it at idle? Is it doing it as you're riding it? When's the last time the system, if ever, has been flushed and had new coolant installed? So there's different scenarios that you need to go through. If the machine's just sitting still, idling, and it's overheating at that point, I would investigate the fan that's on the actual radiator itself. Beyond that, you need to make sure that the fan's actually getting power from the thermistor that's actually closing the circuit that should be sending power to it. And the most obvious thing, is there enough fluid in it to begin with, and is your catch can or your overflow can set at the right level? Because it will actually push fluid into that when it expands or slightly overheats, and as it cools down, it'll draw it back in. And if it doesn't have that reservoir to ebb and flow into, it's not going to operate properly. Beyond that, you may have to investigate a water pump. So there's several different directions you can go, but I need more information to give you more advice on how to do it. If you would, answer those couple of questions, get them back to us. I'll do a little research and we'll get back in touch with you. All right, I have a TTR 125 and second gear clicks, but it shifts into all gears. Fine. What do you think is wrong? So what you're telling me is you put it into second gear and it actually clicks as you're riding it, maybe not engaging all the way around. That sounds like you're missing a tooth on that particular gear, and if that's the case, there's no other alternative but to pull the engine out and split the cases and go find out if that gear is actually missing a tooth or not. All right, Trey is asking me, when tightening my chain on my 04 YFZ450, I can't get either side of the swing arm marks to be perfectly align. If it does get lined up perfectly on both sides after a quick ride, it's out of alignment. What am I doing wrong? All right. When you get it set where you want it, I guess one of the first questions I need to ask, how much tension are you leaving on the axle bolt? Because if it's just free-flowing back there, when you go to tighten it, sometimes just that force of tightening it will make the axle move a little bit. So you want a little bit of tension on the axle bolt as you're running the adjusters back to put tension on the chain. At that point, leave them in place, put a couple of turns or half a turn on the main axle bolt itself, and then get a rubber mallet and go on either side and pop your axle to make sure it's all the way against the adjustment pads or screws, if you're following me here. And at that point, you can go ahead and do the final torque on your axle bolt. And also, don't just tighten it. Actually, go to the specifications, look up the torque value, and then tighten it to that torque. They came up with that number for a reason, and what may be happening to yours is you may not be hitting that torque, and when you romp on it and it pulls on that chain and that axle isn't being held like it's supposed to, it's going to move. Greg is also asking me, should I replace the tube and rim strip when I buy a new tire? Definitely. I mean, because I don't know about you, but I don't really enjoy changing tires at all. And tubes and rim strips, they do wear out, even though they may be still operational and doing what they're supposed to do when you take off that tire to replace it. why not go ahead and spend the small amount, comparatively speaking, to a tire and the labor that it takes to go in and do this, to go ahead and replace all the wearable items that are on the rim. So I would say definitely. Supermoto is asking me, how much does it cost to get crank bearings done on a dirt bike if I already have all the bearings? That's kind of a loaded question. It really depends on the dirt bike, and I assume you're talking about just physically pressing the bearings into the case and then putting it together. Well, that should, if your transmission is ready to go and sitting in the case, a skilled mechanic should be able to do that in an hour, hour and a half. So no more than an hour and a half times whatever rate that shop is charging. All right, this is unusual. CTP is asking me, I've got a 2015 Grizzly 700 and I can't adjust the shifter linkage for it to go all the way in low. Has it been damaged somehow or another, CT? Because you should be able to get the adjustment set all the way up top. I'm trying to remember all the linkage. It is a little complicated. The other question I would want to know, has anybody ever removed the actual shifting arm that's down on the side of the engine? If it was removed for whatever reason and not put in the correct location, that would cause it not to be able to be adjusted properly. It seems to me like your other ones would be out of whack as well. Well, I'll tell you the truth, we have a little bit older Grizzly 700, but I bet you it's set up the same way. When I finish up here, I'll go take a peek at it. I'll have one of the guys mark your post, and I'll see if I can get an answer for you. I hadn't thought about this one, Kim. Why do valve clearances get smaller on motorbikes and not larger? Do you mean that they, on the larger displacements, that they usually have a closer tolerance? Well, my best answer for that would be generally on a larger displacement machine, especially on a sport bike, you're going to deal with closer tolerances because you're dealing with higher RPMs, and you want the minimal amount of slop in any of your specifications, whether it be your bearings or your rings or your clearances on your valve. So yes, it's going to be closer because they want better control of that particular, of the valves themselves. All right, Justin is asking me, my four-wheeler runs fine, but it's leaking a little oil around the top end above the spark plug. Could it be a gasket needing replaced? Probably not a gasket. What you're probably experiencing, and I don't know which model, make and model that you're talking about, but on the top of most four-wheelers, you're going to have valve covers that you can pull and then actually get in there and adjust the valve. And inside of those covers is typically not a gasket, but an O-ring. And over time, the O-ring starts to get brittle, and guess what? It starts letting oil seep out. So that's probably going to be a really easy fix, and also a great time to go in and make sure that your valves are adjusted correctly, because you're going to have the covers off anyway. Now, I think we did a valve adjustment on a Honda 400EX, and I think I went fairly involved on that one. And if yours is anything like that particular model with an overhead just rocker arm setup, I can definitely walk you through it on that one. Supermo's asked me, what would happen if you accidentally put a person, I assume you mean piston, home backwards with the arrow pointing toward the intake? Well, you're probably going to hit your valves, because typically your intake valves are larger than your exhaust, and then they have dishes cut into the top of the pistons to accommodate for that. So if you've got the bigger cutouts faced toward the exhaust side and your smaller ones on the intake, your intakes are going to hit. So pay attention, don't do that. Dylan's asking me, are all the machines in your videos your personal machines, or do you use customers' machine for your videos? They are actually owned by Partzilla. We actually go out and buy them, and just from the general public. and I work on them here. Now, do I consider them mine? Well, a little bit. Do I get to go out and test them? Yes, I do. But do they belong to me? For the most part, no. Now, there are a couple that I do own. That red CT90 that you always see kind of hidden over to the right. My family has owned that since it was new in 1967 when I'm not going to tell you how old I was. I'm just not going to let you know that. The other one that is personally owned is that '09 WAV Z450R. That is actually my son's. So everything else, no, I don't own those. But I do get to test them every so often. Finally, fan doesn't seem to come on, which may be a separate issue, okay? And you're welcome, X. I would definitely start tracking down the thermistor for that particular fan motor, and if you really don't want to have to go through the process of warming up the machine to see if that thermo switch is working, you can go ahead and eliminate whether or not the fan motor is operating by just unplugging it wherever it is, and then applying 12 volts to it to see if it comes on. All right, Nick says, I put too much oil in my 2000 XR100R. Now it smokes and it's lost compression. That's odd that it would lose compression. Having too much oil, that usually causes problems down on the bottom end. It actually foams up the oil because there's too much down there, and it may, I guess it could have hydrolocked and made you lose compression on the rings. Well, at any rate, if you're sure that it's lost compression and you've ridden it enough to where it should have settled down, you know, with the additional oil, let's say 10 or 15 miles after you extracted the right amount of oil out, and then it's probably time for a top-end job. You can probably get away with just doing rings on it, honestly, but do measure the walls of the piston to make sure that they aren't worn out as well. Supermoto asked me, do I own Partzilla? No, sir, I do not. I'm just a fortunate employee here. I'm a monkey with a wrench. But the man that owns it and his wife, they are truly fun to work with. They see way beyond what normal people see, and they have a vision. And this studio is just part of that. And it's quite an honor to work for them and with them. Hi, John. Oil change on an '09 Polaris 500 Touring. Okay. How do you know when to release the pliers on the oil return line? I'm not sure what you're asking me there, WT. I mean, I've changed oil on a bunch of Polarises and 500s, and I don't remember having to close off the oil line on the return line. So I would say never. But now you've piqued my interest because maybe there's something I don't realize about that particular model that's special about the Touring edition. So yes, guys, mark that one because I wanna know now. What else do we have here? Okay, Nick is asking me, hey, what about it's letting black smoke out of the muffler? Ooh, is it the piston rings and the cylinder wall, or what do you think, Partzilla? You're not giving me a lot of information to go on, but typically when you've got that much smoke and oil that has made its way into the exhaust system, it is usually the piston and rings. But if you want to be sure before you pull it down, you can do what they call a leak down test. And that's when you hold the engine at top dead center, you compress air through the spark plug, and at that point, it will this will let you know, well, how much your loss is, how much compression you've lost. And then if you listen carefully to either the intake or maybe take off the oil fill dipstick, you can hear it actually blowing past the rings going into the crankcase, or if you get your ear up next to the intake, you can hear air rushing past the valves, or the valves, period. Okay, guy is asking me about a 2015 KLX 110. It will only start with the kickstart. Sorry about my phone down there. When I push the electric start button, it just makes a slight buzzing noise. I've replaced the battery and the switch in the wiring harness. What could it be? The stator, the starter motor, one of the 10-amp fuses? Well, if you're actually pushing the button and it's making some type of noise, that tells me that it's not going to be one of the fuses, and you're telling me just put a battery in there, and that should be enough to kick it over. But it's not sending enough amperage in there to actually make the connection inside that that starter solenoid. So that's probably the direction I would want to go next. I mean, it sounds to me like you've got a good battery, you've got a good start button, but that contactor is not fully making a connection in there. It's just trying to strain to make the connection in between those two posts. One goes to your battery, the other one to your starter, and it's just sitting there buzzing. So I would aim for the starter solenoid next. John is asking me a question about a 2016 R6. He was at a red light and he was stopping. The engine died on its own. It was kind of a hot day and the bike was on 210 degrees Fahrenheit. That may be at the upper limit when the fan should be turning on that particular model, but I'm not understanding why it would die. Did you ever get it to start back up? Has it started up again since after it had a chance to cool down? So, and the fans were on when it died. Well, once again, did it ever start back up, or it was just turned off at that point? Be right back. Dang family. You can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family. I'm working here, leave me alone. I'm glad your truck is fixed. Have a nice day. All right, Dylan's asking me, my niece has an older Yamaha PW80 two-stroke. Cool. It will only run with the choke on. We have cleaned the main and pilot jet, and we can't seem to get the idle without the choke. Pilot jet, especially on something as small as a PW80, I mean, it's going to be tiny. You can let it sit in carb cleaner for a day, and it's not going to, if it's really stopped up in there, it can't clean out a passage that is so small. Typically a pilot jet diameter is the same diameter as like a cleaning brush bristle. I mean, it's that small, and the chances once it's really gummed up of being able to clean it are almost zero. So I would say go ahead and invest just the few bucks for a new idle jet, pilot jet, and you should be good to go. All right, this is unusual. 440, my 2018 YFC 450R taillight cover came off and got caught in my sprocket. Tightened the chain back up, pipe started getting cherry red. Some say slight hesitation, some say it's running rich. Well, I'm a little lost on this one, guy. I mean, you're telling me that a light came off and then now it changed the way your bike's actually running as far as a lean or a rich condition? Huh. Well, I can tell you as far as them getting cherry red, a lot of people don't realize just how hot those things are getting until they see them run at night, and it's not uncommon for them to to glow red like that. So if that's the case, then it's probably fine. It's just that you've never noticed it before. So give me a little more information, and I'm still not following you why how the taillight cover comes into play here. Not following you. Do you have to rejet a carb for a Power Core 4 FMF pipe? All right, if we're talking about if it's a full exhaust system, yeah, you're probably gonna need to open up the carb a little bit because you're able to expel gas quicker, your intake's going to be a little bit stronger because of that, and so you're going to have to add a little bit more fuel. So I would say yes, if you want to get the most out of it. And if you don't add more fuel, there's a chance that it's going to run a little too lean, and then in that case, a little too warm, and we don't want to go in that direction. What else do we have, guys? Because we're at our 30-minute mark, and that means it's Friday, and now I get to go home. All right, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up on that one. Listen, we just want to say thanks for swinging by, spending a little time with me, sending me a few questions. The ones that I was not able to answer, we will dig back into, and I will get you answered. Once again, we just want to say thanks for shopping with us if you are over at Partzilla, and I promise you we are working just as hard as we can to crank these orders out just as fast as we can. We will get caught up, and you will get your parts. And we just want to say be patient, and we'll get it done for you. Once again, we will be doing this, well, I think next weekend or next Friday again at 3 o'clock, same place, God willing. Y'all have a great weekend, a great week, and we will see you next Friday. Thank you.